to this tutorial. In this class, we're going to actually talk about changing skies. I find, at least for myself, one of the most frustrating things that I might experience is when I've traveled someplace and I have this expectation of what I might see. And when I get there, I actually get blue skies. So this is a great example, the image on the screen, which is in Patagonia. The mountain here is Fitzroy in El Chatan. And, it's a beautiful day. Like, you can't complain that it's a beautiful day, but it's just this, kind of a beautiful day that has really nothing compelling about it in terms of photography, at least for me. So the thing is, though, is that once you're there, you don't really get to call the shots about what weather's going to do. So you're given this opportunity. You've traveled a long distance potentially to this location or to any location. And the way I feel about it is that, you know what, we're going to get out, we're going to shoot, we're going to capture images, we're going to make the best of it that we can. So take that forward, time and technology has changed so that we can now make a change in our skies. I mean, there's a lot of great programs for it, and I'm going to actually show you a couple of different examples in a couple of different ways. Some are better than others for certain things, but it's really made a remarkable enhancement to what we can do with our imagery. So, on one side, I am a purist, and I take photos and share imagery that is, not necessarily straight out of camera, obviously processed, but not necessarily hyper manipulated. But on the flip side, I also look at this as these are my pixels, this is my experience, and I can do anything I want with it. It's my art. So, from that standpoint, I don't have a problem with changing skies. So, it really has to do with, I don't know, what's the story I'm trying to tell and the mood I might be in at the day that I'm processing. So, let's take a quick look at a couple of different ways to do this. Now, as many of you probably know, Photoshop has recently come out with an enhancement with a sky replacement tool. So we're going to start with that one and just see how that exactly does that tool work. So we're going to go ahead and take this from Lightroom, which is currently where it is. I go ahead and I manage all my photos in Lightroom. It's just the easiest way to do it. Okay, so here we are in our image. And when I go to make changes like this, I actually like to do sort of these big moves to the image prior to actually processing the image. So for example, if I had something in here that I needed to clone out, I would clone it out now before I've started to make adjustments and kind of bake in artifacts that I didn't, that just gives me more stuff to like actually fix. So I try to do anything that I'm going to change, fix, big things like this. I try to do that first. So here again, we have this image and we're going to go to the sky replacement tool in Photoshop, and they've placed that tool under edit. So you see it here, it says sky replacement. So I'm going to go ahead and select that. And it opens up and it immediately starts to do things. Now, the one thing in this particular case, I just picked a sky that I had previously selected for something else. So the one thing that it does is it immediately puts in whatever sky is selected as you just saw. But the neat thing is you can actually open this up, select from a wide range of skies. In addition, you can hit this plus sign and actually go import your own skies that then become part of the library themselves. So there's lots of options here. You don't need to use the ones that are baked in. I mean, the ones that are baked in are not too bad. Like these are all skies that they have already included. I've actually loaded a handful of my own skies here. Um, just because I prefer to use all of my own imagery, even when I'm doing something like this. But as you can see, it automatically like selected what was the last thing that I used. So it's kind of sticky like some of the other features in Camera Raw these days. Now, the one thing I try to tell people when I'm doing stuff like this is you have to really think about the light and the direction of light, and does the light make sense? So in this particular instance, the sky is being lit, or the mountain is being lit by the sun, which is off to say my right shoulder. The sky doesn't really work for that because it's not really quite lit the same way. That doesn't mean I couldn't try to manipulate the mountains to make it work, but that's not really my goal. We had a clear blue day and um, a really bright blue sky. And so what I try to do is try to find cloud imagery that would be similar, something that would make sense for the image. I don't try to go crazy because I'm not trying to convince you have something that didn't actually exist. I'm just trying to like make a change to make the sky more interesting. So there's, you just got to look around. Now, in this particular instance, of all the skies that are sort of in here. Now, the other thing that I try to think about when I'm doing this is picking out a sky that has clouds that are reasonable for the area that of the world I might be in. So if these kind of high wispy clouds are probably more likely to occur in the high mountains than, say, big white puffy clouds. So you have to decide, you have to make sense. Does it make sense for me to choose something that someone else might look at and say, oh, that's kind of cool, but we don't get those clouds ever in this part of the world. So you need to kind of think about it. Now, what I tell people when we're on tours is make sure that on the days that we have great skies in this area, that we're actually out capturing those skies, because that way you will have skies that relate to the location and the part of the world that you're in, and you're able to make decisions like this later if you need to actually replace something. So in this particular instance, since I'm just trying to demonstrate the tool, we're going to go ahead and just like pick a sky and go with it. So I actually think this one might be a little bit better for us just because it is um, a bit brighter and the whole scene was brighter. So we're going to go ahead and choose it for now, and we're going to go and just click out of here. So you close this down. Now, once you're in here, you have some choices, and some of this stuff is going to be just about kind of guessing and seeing how you prefer it. So the default is the shifting of the edge is 0, and the softness of the edge, really the fading of the edge, is 100. But if you want to check it out, you can just sort of click around and see which what you like better as you go through this exercise. So if you look right around the mountain here, you'll see that the edge is changing a little bit. You just kind of have to find what works for each image. So each image is going to be entirely different. Shifting the edge is just going to move like the total edge up and down. And then you can do some sky adjustments based on the image that you're bringing in. So if we want to lower that down, and then you can scale it, kind of zooming in and zooming out. Now, I also encourage people when they are trying to replace skies that they do so in a way that um, you don't want to replace a sky that would be at a distance, like the sky that we're looking, or the mountain here is at a distance. So you don't want to replace it with a sky that was clearly shot overhead. You'll run into this sort of disconnect between, well, that's not a natural feeling cloud. So you have to kind of experiment and also make sure. So like we can't scale in super far on this just because it wouldn't make sense that the sky would sit that way on top of the mountain. All right, so we're going to go ahead and hit OK. Now, I actually opened that as a duplicate layer. You can open it as layers, and then you get all of the sky layers, and you're able to like move those around as well. But in this particular instance, I just opened it as its own duplicate, so it's basically already a flattened layer. But you can see from here to here where we've gotten to pretty quickly. Now we would go through the exercise, because now it's kind of like what I would consider your final image or your starting point image, right? And now we would go about actually processing the image. And I personally like to process all my stuff in Camera Raw, so I would come in and I would start doing the work. And the work can consist of many things, and it's going to be obviously to taste. But one of the things I like to do early on is sharpen. And I like to do selective sharpening, meaning that this is 100% of the image is sharpened by 53%. If I start pulling this masking slider down, the further I go to the right, the more of the image becomes black. And what you see here is I'm actually sharpening everything that is white, because white reveals, and I'm sharpening the edges of the mountains. So that's like my primary goal there. Now I did notice that there was something here in the sky that could have been dust spot, could have been a bird. Come out here, I'll come and check that and play with this until I get to where I see it again. And here it is. So I'm going to go ahead and clone it out. Don't know what it is, but you never know. It's going to show up later if somebody looks more closely. So those are the first kind of steps that I do. Again, make the fixes early and then move from there. Now, a lot of people sharpen after the fact, after they're done processing. But see, I like to sharpen first, because then I don't feel the need to put as much aggression into clarity and texture and all of these other things. Because a lot of the times we're using those sliders to try to create this feel of sharpness, and that isn't necessarily a way to do it, right? If we just sharpen our edges first before they're manipulated, then we might feel a little bit more comfortable going a little bit lighter on the clarity slider, which is, it's a great slider, but can go a long way. So with this image, I'm going to start off with doing some selective adjustments. Like you see that other than is the sharpening. I haven't done a single basic adjustment. I haven't done anything globally to the image. I just my preference. I don't like to do. But I'm going to come in and I'm going to actually use the radial filter, and I want to manipulate the face of the mountain here. Um, and actually, let me do something first before I do that. Let's try this color grading. So in this case, I want to, this is basically the new words that they used for split tone. And in this case, I'm going to give a little bit of a blue tint to my shadows and a little bit of warmth to my highlights. It's just a bit there. And that way, and that's a global adjustment, by the way. So that is something that is global, but it'll make processing the rest of what I want to do a little bit easier. So if I start off with the radial filter, I'm actually going to probably bring down my highlights a bit. I haven't even drawn the filter yet. I'm just getting a couple of basic things started and probably want to add some clarity. So I'm going to come in here and I'm going to draw my radial filter around the mountains because that's all I really want to work on to start with. And one of the things that I'm going to try to do is bring out some of the warmth of that morning glow that would have hit this as it hit this mountain. It was definitely had a feeling of warmth and kind of this glowy light. I want to bring up some of the textures here. And you see that I'm starting off kind of easy and small. Now, the thing is the way that I've drawn this is more than likely affecting the sky as well. So if we want to see what we're affecting with this, we can see it here. So right off the bat, we can see that some of these adjustments that I'm making to the mountain are actually happening into the clouds as well. And I don't want that. Now, there's a couple ways to fix that. One of the newer ways to do this is to come down to the bottom where it says range mask and choose luminance. And the luminance is, they kind of help you, it helps define the mask based on the luminosity of the pixels. So the thing about this though, is that when I do this, so I see where the masking is currently. So everything outside the red and white border is being not affected at all. And then everything on the inside of the red and white line is actually being impacted by my adjustments to some extent. So when you look at this, you'll see that it kind of fades off. So these pixels are a little bit touched. And as we get redder and redder and redder till we get to the center here, more and more of the adjustments are happening on the pixels. So as I said, I don't necessarily want any of these adjustments to happen into the sky. So what I would normally do is say, well, okay, do I remove it from the darks? Well, no, because I'm actually removing it also from the mountain. And do I remove the adjustments from the lights by using this toggle? And the answer is no, because you can see that the mountain face, which is what I'm really primarily trying to affect, is also losing its red glow. So in this particular instance, because the luminosity between the sky and the mountain are similar, I'm not able to use the luminance adjustment to adjust my mask. So I'm going to hit none, take that out. And the other way is going back up to these mask options. Now we see a similar area of red, which is fine. The difference is here, I'm able to use the erase tool. And if you look at the my mouse, you can see that it's got two borders and a minus sign. So the way this works is if you have, put it up here so we can see it a little bit better, you see the dashed line around the outside. So everything to the outside of that is not impacted. Everything to the inside of that dashed line is the fade of the impact. And then the solid line around the minus is actually from the minus out to that solid line, it's going to erase everything. So what I'm going to kind of do is find that happy medium in my feathering. It wanted to say minus because I'm removing it from the sky, and now I can just start painting. Now, the thing that's cool about this is because I have auto mask over here on the right selected, I'm able to actually bump all the way up to the mountain. And the software knows that I do not want to remove it from the mountain, just the sky. And the reason it does this is because it sees the change in pixels. So as long as you click kind of in this area, so in this case, like this whitish blue area, then Photoshop's able to say, okay, we recognize you're just trying to remove it from this bluish white area and not from the mountain itself. So you can go all the way up and create a really nice clean mask like I've done pretty simply with this tool. So to get back to the adjustment itself, come in and go back here, make this sure this is green. This is the to add it back if I wanted to paint mask back on, that's this brush. To get back in to continue editing with the adjustments, you just want to choose the radio filter and make sure that it is green. So now I can uncheck the mask because I know my mask is in the right place. So I can come in and at this point, continue to manipulate my, take down the blacks. Again, I might add a little bit more texture. And I think I'm going to add just a little bit more warmth. All right, so that's probably all I'm going to do with that. Now, the next step I might do here is if I want, I can continue to like, if I wanted to, I can continue to manipulate the sky. So say I want to do a gradient filter there. I'll grab the gradient tool, clear it because they've made it sticky in this most recent adjustment, which is sort of annoying. And say I want to just darken the sky a hair. Now, this tool works the same way. For everything from above the green is completely affected, like 100% of the adjustment, in this case, just a tenth of a stop. And then between the green and the red is the fade. So if I turn on the mask, you'll see the fade. And you can see that this is all red, and then this is a fade of it. And then everything from the red dot below the red dot is no effect at all by the change I'm making with the pixels. Now we have the same scenario here. You can see that there's red on the mountain as well. Now maybe I don't want that, and if that's the case, I can do the same thing I just did a second ago. I could try the luminance mask because it is also a feature here, but we've already established that that's not going to work between the two. Or I can pick up the eraser, and in this case, instead of painting on the blue sky, I just paint on the yellow mountain. And as you can see, the adjustments are coming off the mountain range, but not out of the sky. A little bit, like you saw, I just ran over right there and it picked it up, but we're going to fix it so we can push a little bit up here and done. Now, if we want to add it back in, you can see that it's a minus. I can either come and hit the brush, or I can just hold down the Alt key and that will turn to a plus. Change size to that. And just fix the mask up a little bit in these areas where it kind of came away. Turn that off. And again, now we can make some choices. If I want to go a little bit darker to really bring out the coolness of the sky, then I can. And I don't really want to add texture. This is light wispy clouds. I'm not trying to go crazy with the clouds. So hit OK. And there comes our adjustments. And actually, I meant to do one other thing. So I'm going to come back in. This is the beauty of Photoshop CC. I'm going to use another gradient. I'm going to reset these again. And in this case, I'm just going to open up the shadows a little bit. And I'm going to draw my mask from the bottom up. And all I'm trying to do is just open up a little bit of the foreground. Not a lot, just a little bit. Okay, hit OK. So we came from here to here in a pretty quick amount of time. Actually, probably takes longer to talk about it than it does anything else. Obviously, the processing itself and where you end up with the actual image is 100%, subjective. Everybody's going to have a different feel about what they want to try to create. But this is an example of the Photoshop sky replacement tool. So I'm going to go ahead and just close this, and I'm not going to bother to save it. And then let's open up this image. So this image is taken at Hungry Horse Dam in Montana. And, there's a little bit of wispy clouds in the sky, but for the most part, really kind of a boring sky day. But, is what it is. This is the day we were here. And so we went ahead and shot. Now we're going to try this image. One of the things is in the Photoshop sky replacement tool, there is no simple way to deal with a reflected sky. Try it again. And what I mean by reflective is that this image has water, right? So the water is going to reflect the sky that we have. So we have to think about, like, how do we replace a sky and also replace a sky in the reflection below it? And unfortunately, even though it does say there's an option here that says flip. So let's go ahead and just do this really quickly and I can show you what I'm talking about. It's automatically picking this sky, which is fine. We can go ahead and use the same sky for now. It actually doesn't look half bad. I would probably do something a little bit different here. Um, let's see, what are my options? This thing does not move. It's kind of glitchy the way it moves. So you can kind of tell, like you can play with these guys and you'd be surprised. It takes a while to get to one that you feel is like, maybe that works a little bit. So let's go with this one for now. Anyway, you can see that it actually dropped the sky in really nicely. But here's the thing. Now that we have a sky, we can't get it down here. And even if you said, and if you hit flip, you'll see that the clouds move left to right. They don't, so they're flipping on their horizontal axis, not on vertical. Um, and there isn't a choice down here to like sort of replicate. So you think to yourself, okay, well, if I bring it in as a duplicate layer, can I now bring it in and get it on the bottom? And I've yet to figure it out. So I'm going to go with probably no. And it's kind of a downer because there's this presumption that everything is going to have a single sky. And many of us are going to have images like this where we want to also replicate clouds in the water. So I'm going to go ahead and delete this. We're going to start again. This time we're actually going to use Luminar 4. So we're going to come to filter, and if you own the program, if you don't own the program, I would advise it. It's a great for this particular feature. It's a great for other things, but it's amazing for this. But anyway, it's by Skylum, and you hit Luminar 4, and it will open up. And it comes in and you get your image. Now, again, it is a processing tool, so you have a lot of options down here that you can do. But again, I don't like to do anything with my imagery until I have made any big changes. So in this particular instance, it's not super intuitive. There's nothing here that says sky replacement. But if you come here to this little artist palette where it says creative, you can click on that and you'll see that it says AI sky replacement. So once you open this up, you have very similar sort of choices. You have a selection of skies, including skies that they have of their own. Now, to do a sky that has reflection, if you were just doing a single sky like we did on the Fitzroy, then you could easily use one of theirs if you wanted to. But if you're going to use a sky, if you need to reflect it in water like we're going to here, you actually have to load a custom sky. So you just pick load custom, find a sky that you want, and go ahead and hit open. And it automatically drops the sky where you want it. Now, another thing that's kind of cool about this is that you can change well, you can do the blending, which is really the same, but you can also change the position of the sky without scaling. So it's not that you're scaling it, you're just moving it up and down. So you get sort of the kind of scene that you want. Oopsie, not what I wanted. I actually kind of liked where it came in. I like this little bit of sky across the top, or a little few clouds right across the mountain range, um, because I'm going to reflect those clouds down here. But here we are, and we're all set, and we've created the original sort of the sky side of it. Now we need to figure out how do we get this to reflect. So to do that, we don't hit done or anything. We go ahead and leave it the way it is. We come up and we select the layers and you'll get another panel and you're going to go ahead and hit the plus. Here you're going to say add a new image and basically you're going to re-add your sky. So we hit go and it brings the sky and it does wonky things with it. I'm not entirely sure why. It might be a setting I have in my preferences, but it comes in and covers up the whole thing. So anyway, we can fix that in a minute by saying layer transform. So what I try to do is say, okay, let's get this back to where basically looks the same as we do here, right? So give or take, we're basically in the same arena. So, right, it's about the same. That's the first step. So now it's the right size. The next thing we're going to do is actually flip it, right? And you have choices here. You can flip it horizontally or you can flip it vertically. Obviously, for what we're doing, we're going to go ahead and flip it vertically. And as you can see, it's completely overlaid it, but that's all right. It's basically going to land where we want it to land. Now, the next thing we need to do is move it around so that we get to uh, we want it to look like the proper reflection, right? So it doesn't need to be all the way down here where you've got these big clouds on behind the little island, because all that's behind the island is a reflection of mountain from our angle, which means we have to figure out how do we lay this down so that it actually shows that little bit of cloud above the mountain range, which is on the foreground side of the little island. So I'm going to guesstimate. Now I could have changed the opacity of this image before I went down this path so that I could see it. That's a thing. But I just didn't kind of go that direction. And I can show you how you would do that if you decide later that you move too quickly. Here's your opacity. So you can change this so you can see through it. This will help you do your alignment. And then you just hit layer transform again, and that will allow you to come in here and say, okay, that's about where I need this to go. Hit done. All right. So thing is first of all, at normal, it's obviously covering up the foreground of this image. So what we want to do is change our blend mode, and generally someplace between um, overlay and soft light gets us to kind of where we want to be. You can see these other options don't really do what we need them to do. So we're going to go ahead with just soft light. Now, the other thing is that it's just kind of a bit too much. It doesn't feel like a reasonable reflection. And in addition, there's a really hard line here. So we're going to edit the mask, and we're going to go ahead and choose the brush. And in the brush, you can either paint it on or you can erase it. I'm going to go ahead and I want to erase everything, right? I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the whole thing. And now I don't show any. I'm going to go ahead and paint now. And I want the opacity to be down. And I want the softness, I'm going to keep the softness the way that it is. And basically what I want to do now is paint where I want my clouds to be. Now, I also think in this particular instance, so one, I'm able to sort of lay down where I want this stuff to be. I actually think this is too aggressive in the foreground, so I can actually come back and I can change the opacity some more, and I can just erase a little bit, just so it's a little bit calmer in this area. And then the next thing is I can also come out here and I can change my opacity so that it isn't as aggressive in general. The whole image itself isn't as aggressive. But again, we're just trying to get kind of close so that so it feels comfortable. And then we hit apply. And by hitting apply, we're going to go back into Photoshop. And much like the other image, now we have the image that we would start with in terms of processing. So we started with this image here, and now it has clouds in it, and it's got a nice reflection. Now, I actually think this is a little bit too saturated, so I would work with that. I also don't like this junk down here in the bottom, so one of the first things I'm going to do is crop it out because it's not necessary. And this is the image that I would actually start with. And I would take it back out into Camera Raw and I would start processing. So two different ways to do very similar things. Just remembering that if you ever need to reflect sky that you're changing into your foreground or into like a water source like we have here, then you're going to need to use Luminar for that. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope you've learned something and feel like you can get out there, shoot any scene that you want, and make it the image you want to share later as needed. So take care and look forward to seeing you again soon.